In today's conversation, we're speaking with James, learning more about what it takes to be a leader in South London and his work shaping anti-racist policing policies. James, it's great to have you here. I think to start, I was trying to piece together an introduction for you, but you have your hands in so many different pots that I just couldn't think of a way to get just one sentence out about what you do. So I think it'd be good if you just did that for us and gave us a little bit of your background and talk about the work that you're doing.
No problem. Yeah. So obviously, I'm one of the founder of Mainzworld, a community organization that initially started out as a youth organization focusing on prevention, intervention, and diversionary solutions for children and young people. And throughout the years, we've grown and developed into just a community organization that I guess works with and offers opportunities, solutions and development for marginalized communities, period. So some of our projects range from the age of 5 years old is the youngest projects we have up to over 65. So we do quite a lot of work with different groups.
Great. Yeah, I like when people work with wide ranging of ages, and it's fun to think about you offering engagement for and opportunities for people for 65 and up, because people need support from all parts of the
Exactly.
community. And older people in the community are often forgot about. It's young people, young people are future, but older people play a huge part in our communities as well. So that's awesome that you're providing outreach for them.
Yeah.
I think that to start for us, if you could talk a little bit, I know you got your start in music production, but if you could talk about a little bit about the music programs you were running and then what pushed you into full mentorship
Yeah,
or
of course.
mentorship full.
So myself and a couple of friends at the time were running a music record label, and two of us was attending community meetings in Croydon, talking about how we can improve situations for young people that lived within the borough. We decided to create a 12-week music business course teaching young people tangible ways of earning a living through the entertainment space. And that was from the ages of 16 to 21. That was our first cohort and the first step into working with young people within that way. And maybe about 3 months after the 12-week course, I thought, look, let me call around the parents and just see how the young people are getting on. And when I called one of the mothers, she said, haven't you heard? And I said, heard what? And she said, my son's in jail for murder. And that literally just shocked me. And I felt a lot of guilt and regret from what we hadn't done. And loads of thoughts started coming into my mind about what we could do to support some of these young people. Ultimately, at that stage, they was coming to have a music course and that 1 hour and a half a week, and then was just, slinging them out of the office, if that makes sense, and just letting them get on with their lives. And at that point, I realized we didn't know what was going on in their personal life, what was going on at home, if they had any issues, any traumatic experiences. And that's when I decided to start my mentor organization, Mainzworld, and couple it up with the music course. So there was getting mentoring support alongside with the music course.
Yeah. How can you talk a little bit about that experience from shifting your shift perspective more from, I'm sure, a music producer to a mentor, and these young people really need more support.
Do you know what? One thing I would say, it was an easy transition somewhat, in the sense that a lot of the things that you're required to be as a mentor, I was already equipped with doing. I'm a people person. I know that sounds cliche, but I love talking to people. I love learning about people. So I actually got to use some of the skills that I already like to do, but within this space. So I just started talking to them more, speaking to them outside of the course. We kind of amended the write-up on how we was going to do the course and added the mentor into it. And then I was having calls with them twice a week outside of the course, seeing how they felt about the music course, asking what was going on in their lives, if they needed any extra support. And I didn't let them know they was being mentored. We was using at that stage now, we're using the music to engage them and then mentoring underneath that. But the transition was pretty simple for me in regards to my day-to-day and conversations. But when we're talking about when you're working with someone who has suffered from trauma or is going through quite a lot, I then had to I then realized, you know what, I actually need training for this. This isn't something that you can just wing. You know, we're talking to some young people about sensitive subjects that have happened in their life or what's currently going on, or how they're being affected by things that are on social media or their friends and family. And so then I went and took some training courses to upskill myself, and then later on down the line, upskill the team.
So what sort of young people were on the music course initially? Like, where are they coming from? How are they getting in touch? How do they find you?
So at the time we were promoting on our social media pages, we were inundated with, you know, messages. Don't forget, we were a record label that had a little buzz around us. So it was easy to kind of get that interest initially. And we had all sorts of young people. So it was young people from the Croydon area. And it was obviously young people that was interested in different bases within the music industry, so videographers, rappers, event planners, producers. And what I soon realized, because, you know, as we were going on now, I started to separate from the music organization and just focus on Mainzworld. Several reasons. A, that's where my heart was at, and B, I really saw the need within this space, and I couldn't focus on both with the same intensity or integrity. So I had to really drop one. And I soon started to realize, you know, I think a lot of the times when some people, especially myself, think about youth work, I'm thinking about, you know, people that are involved in gangs or, you know, selling drugs. And ultimately what I realized is there's some young people that have never been in trouble with the police or at school, but they're having serious problems at home. There's some people that have, you know, they've got two parents in the household, and you feel like they've come from a great background, but they have poor emotional management skills. So they're always getting into physical altercations with their girlfriends, or, you know, having outbursts at schools, or have problem with authority. So I was unearthing a lot of things and realizing this is an answer to your question, is what sort of young people. That yes, we had young people on our course that was involved in criminality, selling drugs, getting into problems, arrested by the police. But we also had some people that most would think, okay, these are pretty well-off students, but they had unresolved issues that we had to delve into and kind of help them develop and get through that.
That's really interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting because I was just talking earlier on today. My partner is like me. She grew up in the countryside, so it's not her reality to grow up in the city, but she's a child therapist. So she's a child counselor and she works in a school, but she works with a demographic of young people that are like really small young people, play therapy, sort of like 4, 5, 6 years old. So it's just a different demographic when you're working with young people who are that small. But I wonder, if she was working with 13, 14, 15, that sort of age range. I sometimes talk about like the Prince's Trust as well, is that the Prince's Trust is an amazing organization, don't get me wrong, but the Prince's Trust be the first people to admit that they're not trying to engage that most at-risk demographic of individual. They're going for the demographic, a little bit further down.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you a question at the end of this ramble that, the music is an amazing way to, I imagine, is an amazing way to engage with young people or somebody who's struggling in the home, as you're talking about, but also your lived experience as a person who's grown up in the community as well, they can relate to when they walk through the door. So I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about what it is that makes you think that both of those things, why they're so successful at engaging a young person.
I think obviously lived experience being within the community gives you an edge because you can speak in the dialogue that they understand. And I'm not always talking about the literal words that you're using, but just everything, when we're communicating with each other, we're picking up on body language, we're picking up on cultural slangs, we're picking up on, things, the topic of discussion. So that always holds weights in any community, isn't it? We always gravitate towards people that come from where we come from or understand where we're coming from. And in regards to the music, ultimately, so many young people are impacted by music. That is one of the mediums that we know young people are listening to. And it is a perfect tool as an outlet as well. I promise you guys, I could get 10 young boys in the room between the ages of 13 to 16 and say to them, guys, I want you all one by one to tell me some of the problems that happen in your house that upset you. I guarantee you not one will say anything. I could say to those same 10 guys, we're going to write a song where we're going to write a rap song on a beat. They're going to pick their beat. They're excited about their beat. And what I want you to do is talk about some of the dramas at home. All 10 will do it. So it's about understanding how to not only ask the right thing, but in the right way. Music is just an incredible tool. So we started off with just music lessons. Now myself and Mainzworld, we actually do music therapy workshops and music therapy courses, because that's actually what that is.
Yeah, it's a really interesting perspective about creating the right channel for people to express themselves,
Exactly.
and music connects back to their culture, and it's just you're almost expressing yourself without realizing you're expressing yourself, and then you go back and read it and feel that impact. Yeah, that's really interesting. I wanted to get into a little bit about Croydon and some of the challenges in your community, and how did young people respond when you started creating these spaces and these safe spaces of expression?
So Croydon is a challenging area in a lot of ways. The council is heavily bankrupt. It's the borough with the most amount of young people in London. So then in the UK then, because obviously London's the biggest city, the most amount of young people that are neat, not in education, or employment, not in education, employment or training. And we have a lot of serious incidences that happen down here in regards to youth violence, in regards to crime. We've got the Home Office here. So a lot of, asylum seekers that are just coming to the country, come to this area, and then that, creates other, I wouldn't say issues, but other tensions. But what I will say also with all of that is an amazing sense of community, camaraderie, a deep sense of belonging to the borough, and a lot of community organizations, because of the need, being forced together to work together. Community organizations, charities, local authorities, educational bodies, the police. And it's because of that cocktail of what some would see as a serious problem. And, we've had our major incidences. I'm sure if you're in the UK and you've been following the news, you can see some of the unfortunate deaths that have happened with young people throughout the years in Croydon. But because of that, it's brought us together, and there's been work that's been done with the community and the police and the local authority that I've not seen. I mean, we do work nationally and internationally, actually, and I've not seen it anywhere else. And it's because of the makeup of Croydon and the fabric of Croydon.
Yeah, I mean, when I went, James recently invited me to a community event down there, and that space was when you were showing your documentary about the work that you do, and it was such an inspiring community space. There's people from the church, there's people that were just from the community who wanted to come watch, people who were running charities, and then it became like an open council session where everybody was asking questions, talking about the community and solutions, and it was so natural. Yeah, it's kind of like the dichotomy we find where in a community that's can be struggling or can struggling or facing challenges is also where you find the strongest sense of belonging and people who want to make an improvement. And that's where you get back to locally led leadership and people who are from those communities and are so proud to be there, and they don't want to leave, but they want to fight for their community. So yeah, that was really special for me to be a part of that. And I also know that you do a lot of work with kind of building ties and bridging gaps between the community and between the police. And that's something that I really wanted to hear more about, because I think it's such an important part of your work.
Well, how that initially started is the community meetings that we was going to initially, before we even started running the music course, there were always some people in the room, and sometimes it was local officers that was in the room and other services and blue light services. They were in spaces that I was in, but I wasn't necessarily engaging with them. And one of the things that I wanted to do when I started Mainzworld, I thought it was important that I'm in contact with everyone that the young people I'm working with is in contact with. So schools, youth clubs, sports centers, sports groups. And lastly, but not least, were the police, because some of the young people were constantly coming into contact with a stop and search, whether it's being arrested, but they were coming into contact with them. So we opened up conversations. We did various different initiatives. And one thing that I learned, I'm going to be so honest, when I speak, guys, I speak candidly at all times. I hated the police. I absolutely hated the police before I started doing this work. Some from my own experiences, and for a lot of people, for what you see on throughout the media. And one of the barriers I've noticed now is once we see that uniform, it dehumanizes the person, and we don't even see a person. We see part of a system that a lot of people think is broken, and a lot of people think that the people wearing those uniforms misuse their power and overzealous, especially if you're coming from a marginalized community as well. I don't know if you guys know, but when we're looking at figures, black people within this country have the least trust and confidence for law enforcement or police services, I should say. Again, as I said, started forging a relationship with some of the officers. And what was so great about the officers in Croydon specifically was from the leadership team, from the very top, our borough commander, a guy called Andy Britton, was so open and honest and real about the need for community engagement, having good relationships with the community, and importantly, guys, being held accountable. So not only would he come to the community meetings every Friday, either himself or one of the other staff beneath him. So, there's another guy, Inspector James Weston at the time. So there was a few officers coming. There was always an officer in the room, and they took part in community conversations. And again, more importantly, that accountability piece that people have such an issue with. So when a serious incident happened within the community, or just within London, period, to be fair, between the community members and the police, they would come down and speak to us through it as much as they could. So if it was outside of, Croydon, there's only a limit to what they can say while investigation's going on. If it was inside Croydon and they had more of a hands-on with what was going on, they'd come and speak to us and let us know when they got it wrong. Or, it may seem like this from what you've seen on social media, but this is what really happened. That resonated with the community, because one of the complaints is the police aren't accountable. One of the complaints is that us as people of colour are often unheard, over-policed, and mistreated. So to be heard did a lot. And I was able to forge a lot of really good, positive relationships with some of the police. And at that point is when I realized, it's like any other role to an extent, where you've got some people, excuse my French, that are just arseholes, and some people that are lovely. It just so happens that because they have certain powers, when you're an arsehole, it really affects the community and the people that you're serving, as opposed to if you worked in, Costa, So that's how I started working with the police. After the unfortunate incident with the tragic murder, I'm going to call it what it is, of George Floyd, countries all around the world was trying to address the issue of systemic racism. First of all, they was trying to see if the issue existed, and then if there's any actions that need to be taken. Look, there was a resounding voice coming from people of color globally, and even just white people. Everyone could actually see a problem that they've witnessed with their own two eyes, and people that didn't see it before was like, okay, there probably is a problem then, and everyone's feeling it. As a result of that, in the UK, we had someone called Casey, Baroness Casey, who did a report on the police, and what she found was that the police was homophobic, sexist, and institutionally racist. So obviously the Home Office wanted to address some of those issues. One of the things that they wanted to do to address the systemically racist part was create something called a race action plan, which is a national initiative to attempt to improve trust and confidence from black communities, particular because, as I told you, black communities had the least trust and confidence in the police, and wanted to affect some of their figures and make real change. That is reducing some of the disproportionality numbers when we're talking about stop and search, when we're talking about the use of force or of power. And what they did, which was quite good, is they got members from the black community to help design this race action plan. I'm talking about everything, even the wording of it, where what would usually happen is they would design something and say, here you go, blacks, this is what we've done for you. This time, they've come to the community and said, we understand we need you guys' lived experience, voices, and opinion on how best to serve you. I was part of that steering group for the National Police Race Action Plan. And in subsequent conversations over months and months of designing it, co-designing it, changing up the words and whatever, with some incredible other community organizations and incredible police officers who was doing this They wasn't getting any extra pay for this, by the way, but they was part of this initiative because they saw a problem that needed to change also. And because of that, I started working with the British Transport Police, which is a separate entity, but they have similar powers as the Home Office Police, delivering or implementing the race action plan nationally in England, Scotland and Wales in 6 different cities throughout those 3 countries. And training officers on the race action plan, which covers cultural competency, anti-racist policing, community engagement, restorative justice, and preparing them to have meetings with local organizations within their respective cities and talking about local issues, historical issues between the police and Black communities within their cities as well. So that's how I got into that. And that's the one of the current initiatives that we're running, which, might I add, has the ability to be so impactful. Training officers throughout the nation in all of these different cities and creating a toolkit for them while hosting meetings with local community organizations, bridging the gap and getting them to open conversations and have a mutual level of respect could literally change the trajectory of how Black people in the nation moving forward view the police and the level of understanding that we both have, that the police have towards the community and the community have towards the police service.
Mega. Yes. I mean, it's just so cool, man. I don't want to, I've got 2 questions and they're slightly different questions. And everything that you just said was just power, just such positive stuff. So I don't want to backtrack and talk about something that's negative. But the first question I want to ask is you mentioned sort of over policing, stop and search and stuff like that. What does that do to young people being over policed in Croydon is my first question. What are the outcomes what are these young people carrying later on into their lives as a result of that? And the second question is just like, on a more positive way, you just like perfectly resemble what a community leader is, just because you're just like the way that you speak off the cuff about all these opportunities that you've made available to yourself. Like, oh, the Met Police are approaching me for this. I sat on the council of this. The next thing I'm expecting you to say, oh, the king came and he asked me to do this for him. You've made yourself into this person of this real community leader. And so the second question I want to ask you is, how do you do that? How do you make yourself into that force? But I appreciate that they're 2 quite different questions.
Yeah. So firstly, when we're talking about the level of impact of over policing, it has dramatic effects on people in the sense where people get a visceral reaction when they even see the police, whether it's through being stopped and searched and being roughed up, not knowing, one of the most important things, not knowing your right, and then finding out when you get a little bit older that your rights were violated several times. The traumatic experiences of going on social media. And I've got to be honest with you. So a lot of people's experiences, we do a lot of surveys and a lot of questionnaires to people. Do you know when most of the rooms that we're in, only maybe 30% of the people in that room have actually had interactions with a police officer? But I would tell you 90% when you say who trusts the police, 90% keep their hands down. So why do 90% of the people not trust the police, but only 30% have had interactions with them? Because of generational trauma, historical trauma, things that we see on social media, things that we've heard from our brothers, from our sisters, from our parents, what we see on the TV. And, there was a time I actually had to delete social media for a minute. And it was just after the George Floyd incident, because George Floyd got killed, then this person got killed, then, everyone starts posting these traumatic experiences they're having with the police. And one thing was telling for me. I was speaking to a friend one day and she was driving. The car was on loudspeaker and a Black lady. And she said, oh, the police are behind me. And I said, okay, what have you got the phone in your hand or on loudspeaker through the car? She said, through the car. But I'm nervous. I said, well, why are you nervous? I don't know. And that, my friend, is the issue. Police have such a presence because of historical things and things that still go on, that even someone that is a law-abiding citizen, just because she is a Black person, feels uneasy, intimidated, and unsure of herself just seeing the police's presence. So it has a major effect. It has a major effect on young people and their confidence and their place they've put on their self in the world. And it also, unfortunately, breeds some irrational fears. So some of those young people will be right to be on edge about police. Some of those people won't. And then it puts you in a state of making yourself a victim all the time, always thinking that, oh, everybody's against me. So there's two sides of it. There's a real fear and an irrational fear. And, you know, some of the police incidences aren't always with Black or marginalized communities. Well, women are part of marginalized communities as well. But, you know, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the story of Wayne Couzens, the officer that, yeah. So for you that don't know, Dylan, it's an officer that pulled over a young lady in Clapham, told her to get in the car. She trusted him because it was an officer. He assaulted her and killed her. That had major ramifications in communities up and down the country, and nobody trusted the police. And so these have a lot of knock-on effects and I think a lot of mental health issues and trauma comes from negative interactions with the police. Being in a situation with a person or people that you have no power against and they have all the power. Even if you think what they're doing is wrong, they have all the power at that moment. So it's really bad. And your second question was?
I just wanted to follow up on that really quick about the long-term mental health side effects of that. And you're talking a lot about people feeling unsure. And I think that can kind of cascade into kind of like maybe not a general lack of confidence, but just unsure in multiple spaces or just in day-to-day life. I think that if you're constantly feeling like you're in the wrong, that shows up just like in your job, with your friends, at a cafe. A lot of the work that we've done or the people that we've met and engaged with in the past are people doing incredible things, but are unsure of themselves while they're doing it. And it's a lot of just trying to deconstruct. I mean, not me personally, but doing our best to help people learn how to deconstruct kind of what they've learned throughout their childhood, throughout a lifetime, and understand the incredible person they are and the incredible things that they're doing, and just have like confidence in that.
Exactly.
We see it kind of pop up as a general lack of confidence, and it starts from day one where you feel like you're in the wrong for doing nothing wrong. And that just has a trickle-down effect for a lifetime.
Oh, just to follow up, I'd love to hear more on that from you, James. But I was just going to say that when you spoke about earlier, like people not having experience with the police, I was actually thinking about my own experience with the police. You know, I got dragged off a train when I was probably 15 for, well, I won't say why actually, but I was just 15. I got dragged off the train. And there's two officers there, and the officers said to me, they looked at me and they said, have you ever had a criminal record? Have you got any experience with the police before? And I just said no. And I was scared, you know, as a 15-year-old, and they just put me back on the train.
Yeah.
Right? The same train. So it took 30 seconds, you know, and I am so acutely aware of how different that would have been if I was a young Black boy. And yeah, so I mean, it'd just be really interesting to hear you answer about those longer term sort of effects.
Definitely. And we have to understand all of these things are compounded. So the first time in history, it's first time for me when I heard about Black people in school was slavery. So I never heard anything about Black people until we heard about slavery. Throughout, I heard about Henry VIII, I heard about white kings, I heard about white conquerors, I heard about Black people during slavery. TV's changed now, especially since the George Floyd incident, and they're trying to have more diversity and inclusion. But I didn't see Black people on TV much unless they was playing the drug dealer in the soap opera or the TV series or whatever. I didn't see us on TV much again unless you're watching an advert and then there's, you know, the Save the Children, and it's, you know, the deprived Black person in Africa that hasn't got anything to eat. And then you go to school, and again, we're talking about what we see in representation. And then I go out into the world, and then the police are being super rough with me. And these things are compounding. These things are compounding and contribute to your identity of yourself. And throughout your years, when you're in the education system, when you're in, let's even say when you're in work, and there is a way of doing things and your culture is never celebrated or highlighted, or maybe seems that way, the one place that you've got freedom to just be yourself is outside of those spaces. But then even then, if you come across the wrong police officer, you're then being penalized for what you feel like you're being targeted for being Black. So all of these things compounded has major ramifications on your mindset, your view of who you think you are. And then in turn, obviously, the decisions you make. And that's the point where it becomes dangerous.
It's hard to just even understand. Yeah, like the first time you saw anything about a black person in school was slavery. So that's like the first thing negative. It's like just, and then the drug dealer. So it's like always like a negative perception of yourself and of your culture. And you're just like, that's what you internalize without even realizing you're internalizing it. And then the next thing you know, you're getting frisked by a police officer on the streets for doing nothing. And then that leads to those carry-on effects. The work that you're doing with
And can I
I was
say,
gonna go for it.
sorry, go on, finish that point and I'll say at the end.
I was going to say the work that, I mean, going full circle back to where George was talking about, like the inspiration
Yeah.
of the work that you're doing with the police. It's really incredible that that's starting to happen, and that the Home Office and the police officers have been open and engaging and including you guys in those conversations and the policy building and really taking active steps for improvement. I think that a lot of times when we're talking about societal issues, we always end on a negative. You always end on like this problem. Oh, this isn't getting better. But I mean, that's real change and real steps. And I mean, that's huge for that entire, like an organization as big as the Met to say, you know, like we need to improve and how can we improve and let's include these voices. So that's really inspiring.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything else you want to say about that before we transition to.
Well, yeah, I'm happy you brought it back to that, because all of the negative things that I just spoke about highlights why it's so important for me to do this work with the police. You know, a lot of people, because of those issues or because of their experience, would say, I'm not working with them. But for myself, because I like to be, and I hope my organization is solution focused, we have to look at, these are the facts. This is what's happened up until now. These are the issues we see. Is there anything that I can do, my organization can do to improve this, not for me, for the next generation, for my children, for my children's children, for the young people that I work with. So that's why the work is so important, and why I emphasize the potential impact that this can have on the generations to follow.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, let's move on to why you took your work back to Jamaica.
Yes.
And I know you brought a group of young people that you were mentoring from London to Jamaica. So what did they learn? What did you learn? Talk a little bit about that experience, why you did it, and some of the major impact points there.
Well, that's incredible. So it actually rolls on perfectly from what we was just talking about, because I didn't go to Jamaica when I was growing up. I'm of Jamaican heritage. My mum and dad are Jamaican. And I first went maybe 8 years ago. And I know this sounds cliche, but as soon as I went to Jamaica and I got off the plane, I felt at home. So what does that tell you? That tells you that the place that I've born and raised in, that I've never felt like that. I've never really felt at home subconsciously, even though I didn't know it, until I went somewhere where I did feel at home. And there's something in seeing a pilot that looks like you, seeing a government official that looks like you, seeing the bus driver, everybody looks like you and they belong within the space that they're in. So I started doing mentor workshops in schools in Jamaica a few years ago. And it was always a dream of mine to bring some young people with me. And I was able to create a project that enabled me to bring young people that I've been mentoring over the last few years. I mean, one of them was on that very first course, music course that I told you about, years ago. And the rest of them was from the following 2 music courses. So I've been working with these young people for years, developing them into leaders, because they wouldn't have been able to do this project 3-4 years ago. But where they are at now, working with us for a few years, running initiatives, running youth-led projects for us for a few years, they was ready to come out. Most of them was from Jamaican heritage. So 7 of us went out there. None of them have ever been to Jamaica before. So it was incredible watching them deliver to young people, to school students, me within my heart, knowing their background and their growth and where they've come from, and seeing the jubilation and just excitement and self-worth that they had to actually be giving back to people that have less than them, less than what they thought they had, which they thought they had nothing until they went to Jamaica. And we started working in some of the most underserved communities in Jamaica. And it was the whole experience, not just the music therapy workshops that we was doing with the children out there, but some of these guys that are brought out there met their grandparents for their first time, met family members for their first time, ate a mango that we picked from the tree for the first time. These tiny little things that seem insignificant are so important, especially when it's cultural and you've never actually, you think in this country you experience your culture because you go to the Caribbean shop or because you listen to a bit of reggae. But until you go there, that's when you realize I actually didn't understand myself fully or where I come from fully. And a lot gets uncovered and explained when you actually go there. And it was just a beautiful experience for everybody involved.
That's incredible, man. Just for everybody listening, like, there are actually people like James that exist. You know, the way that you say that, and the way that you say that as if it's like, you know, it's an impact stat for you, of course, and that's your, you know, you might have said it so many times before, but for everybody listening, it's just like, there are people like James that exist in these communities that do stuff like that. Like, take 7 young people with Jamaican heritage back to Jamaica to experience what you did and change their life, and that you did. And it's just like, it's just incredible. It really is really inspiring, man. It's really, really
It's
cool.
emotional. It's emotional the way that you talk about it. I know that when we were just like chatting over beers one day, James, about where I was telling you about Seu Jorge, who's this Brazilian artist, and he has an interview of that as well, where he says he went to Bahia, a state in Brazil, and it was like that was the first time I felt at home. Like, exactly like you said, the first time it makes a difference when you're around people that look like you, that act like you, that have the same mannerisms, and the experience that you offer to those young people is, yeah, I mean, not only is it priceless, but it's emotional to be able to watch people connect back to their roots and kind of rediscover themselves. You mentioned that most of these young people haven't been back to Jamaica. And I think a lot of that, or some of that at least, is rooted in Windrush.
Yes.
I'm an American, so I knew nothing about it. Again, in that community event that you invited me to, I actually started learning about people who were unable to get passports, who were unable to go back and visit their families, and they were in England for their entire lifetimes, and they were barred from going back home. So I think that if you could provide a little bit of perspective about what Windrush was,
Yeah.
and how it still shows up in people's lives today, I think that'd be really, really, really valuable.
Yeah, so the Windrush was one of the big boats that brought a lot of Caribbean people over from the Caribbean, mainly Jamaica, to be fair, at the time, but from different islands in the Caribbean after World War II to rebuild the country, or to be part of rebuilding the country. So, you know, that is working on the railways, London Transport, different spaces throughout, you know, the workspace. Obviously, we'd lost loads of people in World War II and we're trying to rebuild the country. So Caribbean people was invited over here. When they came over here, they was met with hostility a lot of the times, like what most people face when they come to a new space. They found it hard to open bank accounts. They find it hard to get housing. I don't know if you've heard of this phrase before, Dylan, being from American, but there were signs on hotels saying no blacks, no Irish, no dogs, because they didn't want those people in renting from them or buying from them. And somehow, through resilience and community, Caribbeans got together and made it work. But a lot of them didn't sort out their papers properly. So then what we had now with their children that came after them, it was hard for some of them to sort out their passport because their parents' paperwork hadn't been sorted out properly. And that's what you heard from one of the people that came to Jamaica. You know, he only got his passport at 28 because his mum died and he couldn't prove who his parents was or whatever. There was just loads of different things. And so, yeah, it affects loads of people to this day, you know, what happened with the Windrush. And ultimately, again, as I said, in day to day, we're here. So the fact that we are here and most of us has come here via, you know, that Windrush era shows you the impact that Windrush has had not only on Black people or Caribbean people in this country, but the country as a whole, because it changed the makeup and the fabric of the country moving forward.
Yeah, thanks for that perspective. I think that, again, we've talked about trickle-down effects a lot in this conversation. You know, the trickle-down effect of a stop and search, and the trickle-down effect of Windrush, and how it shows up in somebody's life, and somebody that I mean, yeah, they've done nothing. They were born in the UK, but they're not necessarily British or they're not necessarily Jamaican, and they're trying to figure out their paperwork and their passports and just little things that have huge impact on somebody's life. So thanks for talking more about that. Just to finish up, we wanted to go back to some more upbeat and positive stuff. You didn't answer George's question,
Yeah.
George. I think you should ask it about how you become a leader. I don't know. You worded it very nicely. I kind of forget, but if you could re-ask that, I think it'd be a good
Yeah.
point to.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was just saying that, you've made all this opportunity available to yourself. And so I'm like, if somebody's listening, if there's a young person listening somewhere from Croydon, how have you done that? Or for anybody listening, actually anywhere, you've made all this opportunity available
Me.
to yourself. For me, yeah. How have you done that? How have you positioned yourself like that?
I've got to be honest. And do you know what? I'm going to start off, George and Dylan, by saying I hate when people give me wishy-washy answers, but I have to give you one. And I hate when people when I'm asking you a practical question, please don't give me a spiritual answer. But I'm going to have to impart that as well. I think, you know what? God he's just opened so many doors for me, because sometimes I have to say to myself, why? I don't think I was qualified to get in that room, but I was in that room. I don't think I planned for this door to be open, but it was opened. I think one thing about myself is I love people. If you come out with me, George, you'll see I am a people watcher. We'll be sitting in a restaurant and I'm looking. I have to hear people's conversations. I'm interested in people. I like to know what they're doing, what their background is, and it just so happens that being that way assists with the type of work that I do, because it allows me to be able to help you. It allows me to be able to spot opportunities as well. Okay, people might see someone in the bar and not speak. I'm going to speak to you just randomly. And then we start talking about work, and that could be an opportunity. So, yeah, I'm a person that really enjoys being around other people and their company and spotting opportunity. And guess what? Luck is involved as well. That, we have to speak about that, because ultimately I heard someone say something once. They said something about if Steve Jobs was born 50 years prior, he may not have been the great man that he was, because his brain may have been wired for this internet era. Maybe 50 years ago, when everything was hard labor, he wouldn't have, been the great person that he was. So even being in the right place at the right time is part of that. Unfortunately for the victims, I live in an area where there is need for the work that we are doing. That's part of it. I'm blessed enough to be in a city where, as I said, all of the grassroots statutory educational bodies, police services, blue light services have come together to want to move the town forward. And yeah, do you know what as well? I am fearless and bold, and I will speak when I need to speak to somebody. And yeah, and I think I'm authentically myself, regardless of anything. And I try to stay in that lane.
I was going to say, did you learn to be fearless and bold? Is that a skill that you learn, or is that a skill that you're born with? And how do you develop that?
What a good question. I'll be honest with you. I learned that. I actually learned that. So most people would think that you're born with it. So I don't know if I can call myself this now. I was an introvert. Then I started saying, you know what, I'm an extroverted introvert. I think now I'm just at the point where, yeah, I'm cool. I don't know if there's much introvertedness in me. Although some things still make me feel weird. If I see somebody in, let's say I see someone in Tesco's and I say hello, and then I walk around and I see them on the aisle again, I feel so weird. I just pretend to look at something on the shelf. We've already said hello now. That's it. I don't want to do it again. So I still have some introvertedness in me. But yeah, I've learned to be like that over time. When I was younger, I wasn't as outgoing. I wasn't as expressive. I didn't speak to as many strangers. But actually through some job roles that I had and some different things that I've done, I've just learned to be more like that. And I enjoy being more like that. Ultimately, guys, when you come from these kind of areas, when you're young, you can't be the friendly, speak to everyone guy, because you're going to get robbed, you're going to get violated. People are going to, see that and think, okay, let's use this to get at the person. So I wasn't able to be this person when I was younger because of the environments that we lived in.
Yeah, I'm really interested about that in the growth of skills over time, because it's such a powerful skill. You are a people person. Again, just when we were at that event, we were at the bar, you were talking to everybody as if you knew them. You were yelling at the person across the street.
Yeah.
And It's valuable connections. It helps your presence in the community. But those are really hard skills because it's consistently putting yourself out there, front and center, and being confident in yourself and being confident in your voice. And so I think it's just interesting to when there's somebody really confident like yourself. It's like it seems like you were born with it, but you actually skill over time, which I think provides a little bit of hope for other people, so that those skills can be learned.
Definitely.
Well, just to end, I don't know if you have another question, George, but I always like to ask, what's the message you want somebody to take away from this conversation?
Okay, so it's got nothing to do with what we've spoken about today, but I'm going to say it anyway. Nothing, anything short of something happening to your own children, nothing is worth stressing about. And I mean nothing on planet Earth. Nothing. You know, stress affects us more than the actual situation. The worry about what's going to happen more than the actual situation. And I wish that's something that I learned many, many years ago. So I think that's an important message that I hope some people carry with them.
I love that. I love it because I try to think about that a lot as well, because in the moment, I think, why am I so stressed about this? I know tomorrow I'm not going to be stressed about this.
Yeah.
The moment's going to pass. But for some reason, it's so hard to not stress about it in the moment, even though you can compartmentalize, like, I know this is going to pass. I know it's not going to happen tomorrow. But in the moment, it just is all consuming. So I love that. I love that message. And thanks for it. George, is there anything else you'd like to add? And I think we're wrapping up here.
Yeah, Dylan will be the first one to tell you that I need that stress piece, man. So thanks for that. He will be. No, I just think you are next level, man. I'm sure you hear it all the time, but it's just inspirational and an absolute privilege to talk to you.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to working with you more, finding ways that we can work together. I'm looking forward to your book. I'm looking forward to your prime ministerial campaign. I'm just looking forward to the yeah, it's all happening.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.